Thank you so much for being here tonight. All of us at Illinois Right to Life are so glad that you're here. You're going to learn tonight about the REACH Act, as well as the efforts to repeal our parental notification of abortion law, or as we call it, P&A repeal for short. I'm Amy Kirky, the Executive Director of Illinois Right to Life. I joined IRL about 3 months ago in early December, but in all honesty, it seems like it's only been about 3 weeks. As you all know, Illinois has a lot going on when it comes to the life issues. Over my 30 plus years in the pro-life movement, it's become very, very clear that just when you think that the abortion industry can't possibly shock you anymore, they do. Such is the case with this legislative session. The top legislative priorities of Personal PAC, Planned Parenthood, and other Illinois abortion advocates, P&A repeal and the REACH Act, seek to expand the profits of the abortion industry at the expense of Illinois children. As you'll hear tonight, these two bills will allow Planned Parenthood and their ilk unfettered access to Illinois school children, will cover the crimes of sexual predators, and will absolutely trample the rights of Illinois parents. We're glad you're here tonight to learn more about this. The news is not all bad, though. We're also going to discuss the details of some of the pro-life bills that have been introduced this session and let you know how you can make a difference. The truth really is that all of you who are watching tonight are the ones who are going to turn the tide and turn Illinois back to a state that respects all innocent human life. And the reason I'm in Illinois is I firmly believe that this can and it will be done. While we're very, very glad to see you tonight on this webinar, we would love to see you in person. And we have 3 opportunities in the coming year for you to do this that we'd like to tell you about. First, the Illinois Leaders for Life banquet will take place on Friday, April 30th at 6 p.m. at the Carlisle and Lombard. I have to tell you that tickets are very, very limited. We are striving to adhere to all of the current COVID-19 restrictions, which, as you know, are changing daily. But we want to try and keep everybody safe. So please get your tickets now if you'd like to attend. Our special guest is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, former press secretary for President Donald Trump. And personally, I'm really excited to see her because she's a fellow Arkansan, and I originally come from Arkansas. So I'm really excited about this event and hope to see all of you there. Our Project Love Rise and Dine Breakfast will also be back this year. It's going to take place on Saturday, August 7th at the Doubletree in Lisle. For those of you who don't know, Project Love is our grant program that provides monies directly to, well, not directly to women. It provides women with relief from immediate financial crisis that might be leading them to consider abortion. We work with pregnancy resource centers to provide payment directly to landlords, utility companies, and other legitimate creditors, so this financial crisis is alleviated and women can choose life. So Project Love is a great, great program, and our Rise and Dine Breakfast to support this, as I said, August 7th at the Doubletree in Lisle. Finally, the Illinois Right to Life Action Banquet is back again this year for, provided there are no unforeseen circumstances. So that will be sometime this fall. We're in the very early planning stages, so keep an eye out for details about that. So I am very, very privileged to introduce our panel tonight. Our very special guest is Representative Avery Bourne, who represents Illinois' 95th district. That's located between Springfield and St. Louis and includes Montgomery County. Avery was born and raised there, and her family has farmed there for generations. She joined the Illinois legislature in 2015 and since then has been a passionate defender of the right to life. Most notably, in May of 2019, she argued eloquently against HB 40, the so-called Reproductive Health Act, for 45 minutes when she was, I believe, around 34 weeks pregnant. That, in my book, makes her an absolute pro-life rock star, and we're so glad to have her. Today, Representative Bourne serves on a number of influential committees, including the Elementary and Secondary Education Curriculum Policies Committee, where she's the Republican spokesperson. And this is very noteworthy because just today, the REACH Act was assigned to this committee. So thank you again, Representative Bourne, for being here tonight. Next, we have Ralph Rivera. He is the legislative chairman of Illinois Right to Life and probably needs no introduction. He is one of the most respected lobbyists in the state of Illinois and has been a tireless advocate for the rights of the unborn and other vulnerable populations since the 1970s. He is an absolute expert in both legislative history and strategy and has incredible insight into all of the legislation we'll be discussing tonight. He is an invaluable asset to Illinois Right to Life, and frankly is one of the kindest people that you'll ever meet. And he's been so helpful to me as I've been learning the ins and outs of the crazy world of Illinois politics. Finally, moderating our discussion tonight is Dr. Steve Jacobs. Steve received his law degree in 2016 from Northwestern University School of Law, and not content to settle for a JD, he went on to receive his PhD in comparative human development in 2019 from the University of Chicago. Steve is incredibly humble about his achievements, but I have to say the reason that he sought all of this education was so that he could be the most effective advocate possible for the unborn. Steve does so much at Illinois Right to Life. He currently oversees our pro-life training tour. He's the host of our Life Chat podcast, and he's overseeing the development of a comprehensive student resource page that will launch later this year. He's been interviewed and published extensively, and his latest article called "The Future of Roe versus Wade, Do Abortion Rights End When a Human's Life Begins?" is in the process of being published by the Tennessee Law Review. Before I turn it over to Steve, a couple of housekeeping issues. If you would like to ask questions, please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. We will get to hopefully all of your questions at the end of the discussion tonight. We're also going to be sharing a bit of information on slides throughout the presentation. If you're not able to write it all down, don't worry. You'll all be receiving an email with all of this information tomorrow, and all sorts of other goodies that will help you be able to stop these laws. So we're going to try and keep the discussion to an hour, but there is so much information about these bills. It's a lot. So we ask your patience as we get through all of this and try to get to all of your questions. So that's all I have to say right now. So Steve, please take it away.
Thank you, Amy. So Ralph, I wanted to start off by talking about the REACH Act. Can you tell us a bit about it? What does REACH stand for, and how would it impact Illinoisans?
Excuse me, Ralph.
Yeah.
You're muted. That's okay.
Oh,
happens
boy.
to the best of
Okay.
us.
Thanks. I forgot. I was trying to be quiet. Okay, so REACH stands for Responsible Education for Adolescent and Children's Health. And that sounds very good. Who would be against that? They love to put wonderful statements like that or tags like that, but it is a terrible bill. This is a sex education bill which promotes abortion and other things. And I want to go into some of those statements they make in their bill. It's a 33-page bill, but it goes page after page after page saying what students are supposed to learn and affirm. So with that slide, you bring that slide up, I'll kind of let you see what some of this legislation specifically states. Okay, here we are. So I've done this by pages. So for third through fifth grades, it says that the students will get information about local resources where students can obtain additional information and confidential services related to sexual and reproductive health. So at 10 years old, at your 8 to 10 years old, you're going to be getting information on confidential services on sexual and reproductive health. Then for 6th through 12th grades, it says that they'll receive the same stuff, but also they will receive information about the rights of individuals to obtain reproductive and sexual health care. That's abortion. And that includes abortion, of course. It also talks on page 10 and 11, as you see, unbiased information and non-stigmatizing information about the options regarding pregnancy, including parenting, adoption, and abortion. So when you think about unbiased information and non-stigmatizing, that sounds good. But the unbiased means they're not going to give a pro-life perspective of that. And the pro-life perspective can be stigmatizing, they believe, to students. So as we talk about this bill defines medically accurate, that includes information provided through I can't, that just blocked me on mine. Let's see. Through instruction, instruction is verified or supported by research. So what that should mean is that if it's medically accurate information, it should demand that students are taught that life begins at conception. That's medically accurate. And that abortion is the killing of a human life. That's medically accurate. But they don't consider it that. They consider it to be biased and stigmatizing. And so all of these materials, it says, may not conflict with the provisions of this section or this act. So if there's a school that says, well, we want to do a lot of abstinence and put that in, there's actually wonderful abstinence curricula, they'll say, no, you can't do it because it conflicts with the provisions of this section. So this is the first time we've seen this in sex education material where they're actually promoting abortion and even talking about it by using the word abortion. So this is a situation where they are trying to stop us with the Parental Notice of Abortion Act repeal, which they say that makes them this state 100% pro-choice, but now they want to go after the children and educate them on abortion. So I'll stop there.
Avery, as a legislator in the fight against the REACH Act, why do you think this is such a legislative priority for pro-abortion politicians in Springfield?
Yeah, that's a great question. And obviously, it's concerning for a lot of us who not only are pro-life, but believe in local and limited government, right? Believe in being able to go to your school board and talk about the curriculum that your students will be exposed to. And so this is really a centralization of what every student in the state shall be taught. That's where you see the mandatory language. And I'm not a believer in big government, just like I'm pro-life. I think those two go hand in hand. The rights of the parents to be able to know what their children are being taught in school, and beyond the addition of mandatory education on abortion, it's mandatory sex education. And so right now we have sex education is not mandatory in Illinois, and this is a sea change in the way that schools and teachers will be required to educate students.
And that's such a good point. And Avery, what's the status of the bill, and what are you expecting for its timeline?
Yeah, we actually, I'm glad we spoke before this because I just realized this bill was sent to a different committee today and assigned to a committee hearing next week. We never know exactly when a bill will be called for a vote, but we do know that there is the opportunity for them to call it for a vote next week. And so if I've learned anything, it's that you always expect the unexpected and you're prepared for a bill whenever it may come up. So this could be voted on as early as next week.
Hmm. And Ralph, if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit, just because you have your nose to the ground in Springfield, why do you think this is so important for that side?
Well, again, this is by mandating sex education for the public school system. As Avery said, the current law doesn't mandate sex education. Mm-hmm. They're going to, and the way they frame the material that has to be taught, really only Planned Parenthood and their kind can be the ones that can come in and teach it, along with the teachers that are asked to teach this. So they now have complete access to our public school children to indoctrinate them, to give them information, say, well, look, you have a right to know about, and then talk about where they could get abortions, or they're hoping in getting rid of the repeal of parental notice to say to the students, you don't have to tell your parents about this. And so this combination is their goal.
So it sounds like it's not only the normalization of abortion through this so-called non-stigmatizing information, but it's also through the monopolization. So obviously, speaking as somebody who works at Illinois Right to Life, it's not easy for us to get into the schools to teach scientifically and medically accurate information. If they pass this, they will essentially be the only organizations that can come into the schools and normalize abortion at a very young age. Is that right?
That's correct. There are actually abstinence curricula that is going on throughout Illinois. Mm-hmm. And it talks about character building, respect for yourself, and abstinence. These programs will not be allowed in the public schools if this passes, because it's in conflict with what this material is.
Wow. And later, we'll discuss how to talk to legislators about this, about the REACH Act, and how you can voice your opposition to it to the audience. But for now, I want to turn to the Parental Notice of Abortion Repeal. So again, our shorthand is the repeal of PNA. And Ralph, would you mind if you started us off with a bit of a brief history on the act? So not only their repeal attempts, but just the Parental Notice of Abortion Act. So that I know there's a long history there. And for some of our audience who might not be aware, I think that would be helpful. And then get into the recent efforts to repeal it.
Okay. So this law, the Parental Notice of Abortion Act, was passed in 1995. And it was challenged. It went to federal court. And the law, so the act cannot tell the Illinois Supreme Court what to do. There's the legislature can't say to the Illinois Supreme Court or the appellate court, you have to do this. They can tell circuit court judges what to do, but not at that level. So the act says, and asks the Illinois Supreme Court, you have to promulgate certain rules for expedited appeal procedures. And until they do that, this law could not go into effect. So they went to federal court. The federal court agreed. Without these rulemaking procedures, this law could not move forward. And the Illinois Supreme Court chose not to promulgate these rules. So now you fast forward about 17 years, and we finally get into this, well, a little shorter than that. And we find out that, well, the court has changed. And so we have a court that may want to promulgate these rules. So we asked the state's attorney of DuPage County, named Joe Burkett, and say, would you go to the Supreme Court and say, look, could you revisit this? And they did. They promulgated the rules. So went back to federal court. The court says, okay, they upheld, they found our act constitutional. Then the other side takes it up to the state courts, and that goes through the courts. It reaches the Illinois Supreme Court in about 2012, and on a 7-0 decision, they uphold the parental notice. Even pro-choice judges support that. So in 2013, this went into full effect. And what we saw was, we are seeing about 1,000 unborn babies saved every year with this act. And of course, those minor daughters, they're protected and saved and parental rights established. Before this law went into effect, minors from the surrounding states of Illinois all came into this state if they wanted an abortion, because the surrounding states all have a parental involvement law, either parental notice or parental consent. So if we cannot stop this repeal, these minors will be coming into Illinois, plus our own resident minors will have an opportunity if they want to get an abortion, because there's no law to say you can't go to you don't need to go to your parent, or you have to go to your parents.
So this is pretty puzzling because, they supposedly support choice, and they see that once a minor daughter or minor underage girl, once their parents find out about it and they get the support that they need, they choose life. It sounds, if I had you right, 1,000 a year.
That's right.
So given that, why do you think it's important for them to repeal it? Why is this one of their top priorities?
I'm always mystified with this. It's not their statement used to be safe, legal, and rare, but they only want it legal. Another problem with if this were to be repealed is that you're taking away these parental rights. This mentality that because there might be a dysfunctional family, then no parents should be given notice. It makes no sense. The other thing is that if this law is repealed, the problem of human trafficking, now human traffickers could be working with minors, and if that minor is into sex trafficking, they get pregnant, they can take them to an abortion clinic, and the parents don't know. And in this law, there's an option that the U.S. Supreme Court required us to do, where a minor could go to court and seek a waiver of notice. So that's not even there. And what's amazing to me, and I would give this to Avery, I've noticed in the past few years and this year's that a number of the legislators, including Democrats, are sponsoring bills dealing with human trafficking. So, it's absolutely true that they're concerned about this. And I think legislators need to know that without this law, this is going to increase human trafficking concerns or situations in the state of Illinois. So, Avery, what do you see?
Yeah, I think that it's important to note too that this will not be a partisan bill. As you mentioned, there are people on both sides of the aisle concerned with human trafficking, and there are people on both sides of the aisle who I think disagree with this. And certainly, I think a majority of Illinoisans support leaving this in statute for the rights of the expectant mom to have this support. But also, it's just so common sense. This isn't even consent. This is notification. Telling a trusted adult in your family that you are considering this life-altering choice, right? You're considering ending the life of your baby. Also, it could be medically and harmful for them mental health-wise as well. I mean, notifying a trusted adult when you are a minor just makes so much sense, and requiring it, we require it for so many other things that minors get consent to get a tattoo or donate blood, right? But they're going to take away even the notification of a parent that they're considering aborting their baby.
And when it's so important for them to protect women, what does that do to an underage girl who just underwent, what can be a very dramatic procedure, and then for her family to not even know about it, that she feels like she has to keep up the facade, especially if she had been actually perpetrated on by a man who's of an older age. So if I have that right, Ralph, a certain percentage are of young women who get pregnant, minors, that they have actually been impregnated by a man over the age of 21. So it's also an issue of shielding the abusers. It just seems hard to reconcile how they could be trying to protect women at a time when there are these underage girls who presumably have no support if there isn't notification of their parents or their guardians.
Right. The information we have is that 32% of teen mothers ages 15 to 17 are impregnated by men older than age 20. So that's at least 20. And that's very concerning. And, that will continue unless you have some protection. And because then these girls will seek an abortion.
And yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Ralph. Avery, how do you see the repeal, God forbid that actually happens, but if that were to take place, how would you see that affecting not only young Illinoisans, but young girls from other states?
Yeah, I think you both have said this pretty clearly. Illinois has become an abortion destination for women in other states because of the radical legislation that they've passed throughout the years. And the fact that they would pass a bill that makes Illinois an abortion destination for minor girls is just, this is a really difficult topic to talk about because it's just so hurtful for these young girls. And to put something like this in policy, I think is, it's really unbelievable, which is why it's so difficult to have these conversations with legislators, right? Because it's an emotional and a really heavy topic. And oftentimes, right, it's hard to have that conversation with your lawmaker of like, we're not making this up. These are the real ramifications for minor girls who are going through probably the most traumatic time in their life. And to not give them the support of adults in their support system, to take away that check before they make this decision, I think is, it will obviously be damaging, but also it goes against what many who are pro-choice say that they want, right? They say that they want women to make decisions with the best input possible. They say that they want fewer abortions. We saw that when this passed, Ralph can correct me if I'm wrong, within 5 months, we had 20% fewer abortions for minor girls.
That's correct.
It works. The goals of having fewer abortions work. So I think it goes against their own policy goals, and it's just so damaging for these young women.
And even to remove the supports if they were to make that choice for abortion, it's just, especially considering the out-of-state underage girls, to incentivize them to have to travel across state lines. In what way would they be putting themselves at further risk by having to find somebody to transport them? Sorry, I'm at a bit of a loss. But finally, Ralph, what's the status of these repeal efforts, and what are you expecting for its timeline moving forward?
So House Bill 1797 has been sent to the House Human Services Committee, and they will have a hearing next Tuesday afternoon. And so I think it's posted already for a hearing, and they could call it at that time. There's another week left after that week where supposedly the House deadline for House bills out of the House committees. So it could come up next Tuesday. And we will be talking about how the listeners can do witness slips, electronic witness slips, and we'll be showing them how to do that. And for the REACH Act, And legislators need to know, but they also have to talk to their legislator.
And before we get into how to talk to their elected officials for the audience, is this winnable? And I'll bring both Avery and Ralph into this. Is this something that we can win?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I definitely think so. We saw several pro-life Democrats join Republicans in voting against the RHA, and it was close. We've seen, I think, some buyer's remorse with that, of lawmakers who realized what they voted for. And at the time that it was passed, Ralph would know this better than I do, I think it was pretty widely agreed that they would not try to repeal the parental notification of abortion because they didn't think they could do that. They thought they didn't have enough votes. So I think if we tell the truth about what this bill means in a respectful manner, right, to lawmakers who are have hearts that are softened to our side, it could really, I think we could win it. And by win, I mean protect girls.
That's right.
What this is.
Well, that's very encouraging. Thanks for sharing that. And since we started on that topic, Avery, I'm sure you spend a good deal of time interacting with your constituents. So I think our audience would really appreciate hearing your perspective. How would one go about contacting or making an appointment to meet with a legislator?
Yeah, we are kind of in a weird time of meeting with lawmakers. We have virtual committees and we're not all in Springfield, so it's not really possible to come to the Capitol and meet with us one-on-one. I would say that I often get phone calls from constituents. I often get handwritten letters. I will tell you, every lawmaker I've ever worked for or interacted with reads every handwritten letter that is sent to them. That's a very special thing to get a handwritten letter. But it's their job to meet with you. So I would say I have a couple of policy concerns. Tell them what you want to talk about so they don't come in blind, and ask for a phone call, personal phone call. I've done a lot of Zoom meetings, met people in person. And if you're not able to meet with them, communicating with them via email, I get Facebook messages, a handwritten letter, any of those ways work. But I would say a one-on-one is absolutely the best way to ask them questions about where they stand on the issue, why they think that, give them your side. But I would say as long as you ask in a respectful manner to meet with them at a time that works for them, there shouldn't be any reason that they're not willing to sit down and have a conversation.
And is that true in times of Corona? So have you found yourself having Zoom meetings, or are they actual in-person meetings?
I've done a little bit of everything. I've met people outside, I've met them inside. I've done Zooms and phone calls. It's whatever they're comfortable with or doing right now. They might be in virtual committees, so they might be able to fit you in a 10-minute Zoom in between committees. I would offer a couple options if I were you. I'm willing to talk on the phone, willing to do a Zoom, willing to come to you, whatever the case might be.
So as much as you can be respectful and flexible, that gives you the best chances.
I think it helps start it off on a good foot, right? If people are willing and open at the beginning, it usually makes for a better conversation.
And if you wouldn't mind, just could you share if you've ever had an experience where a handwritten letter, a one-on-one, maybe it didn't change your vote, but it really forced you to think about the issue differently, just to really encourage our audience to see that it really could have an impact if they reach out?
I can think of a few bills where a conversation with someone sticks with me to this day, right? I might have already been on their side, but kind of didn't have a personal connection to it or didn't know how much it would impact somebody's life. And then when they tell me personal stories or get down to specifics of real life examples, that's when I think it hits a lawmaker's heart, right? We look at words on pages every day, but how it actually impacts someone's everyday life is the part that's sometimes left out of the conversation. So absolutely that happens. And lawmakers are really swayed by the volume of people too. If we have 4 people contact us on a bill, and if we have 5,000 people contact us on a bill and it's all the same email, it's kind of like, oh, these are all the same. But if we get a lot of personal emails that aren't the same as everybody else's email, I think it really hits you a lot differently, because it takes a lot for someone to get on their computer, find the email address for their lawmaker, write a personal email, send it. That takes a lot of effort, and that means you're really passionate about it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that unique perspective, right? So we all might have ideas about what might be effective, but hearing it from you, Representative Bourne, really appreciate that. Now, given that, so it sounds like to whatever extent you can personalize it or talk about personal experiences, that's great to put that human face on it. But Ralph, specifically on the REACH Act and the Parental Notice of Abortion Repeal Act, how would you advise our audience to most effectively communicate their views to the legislators? If we said, just from an argument perspective or a data perspective.
Yes, I think sometimes people are afraid to talk with legislators. They say, well, I just don't know much about the act. I don't know this. But I think legislators they want to know your feelings. And you don't have to explain everything, but you say, for me and my family, this is important. And I'm opposed to this because I want to protect the students. I want to protect these girls. And just a one or two, and I think legislators are happy, even if they disagree. As Avery said, if you get a number of people calling or talking, or those legislators, that's important to them. I was going to ask Avery, used to be on a letter, they used to say, if you did a handwritten letter, it represents 100 people because, 99 others planned to do it, but didn't. Do you look at that where you say someone calls and say, yeah, well, there's 50 people who didn't call, who really care and have that same view. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, we have the privilege of representing 118,000 people, and we have to recognize that most people have lives that are much too busy to worry about what Springfield politicians are planning on passing. And so for the people who are paying attention, that's already a small fraction. And then for them to contact us is an even smaller fraction. So I think most legislators recognize that those who are contacting us are probably very like-minded with their neighbors and family members and church family and coworkers. I absolutely think that one handwritten letter is it hits me like it's 100 people. Because you're like, whoa, they wrote a handwritten note. I save all my handwritten notes. And I think probably most lawmakers do.
Thank you.
Well, if that doesn't encourage us to write a handwritten note, I don't know what would. And I just want to open this up to the rest of the panel as well, Amy. So are there any other tips or insights that you have to share in terms of, how important it is to be respectful, not combative, right? You're not there to argue against the representatives, but rather to share your perspective or provide them with some information, in terms of using anecdotes versus data. So putting that human face on it, following up with a thank you letter, any pleasantries like that, anything else that just might move the needle for a legislator.
Well, I'd like to say that maybe on the other side, I have talked with legislators, been in their office, and Molly Malone Rumley had been with me. We're talking to a legislator, and they would say that someone was very rude to them, or that's in one way or the other. They were just so angry, maybe even cursing at them. That does not win. This does not set well. There's no gain in this. It may make you feel better, but our objective is to save these lives and protect these young girls and the children. So you just have to be respectful, and in the long run, it wins. It really does. I don't see a gain ever in getting angry or telling them, I'm not going to vote for you. What does that get you? Just talk to them about the issue. They get it. They didn't win elections. Avery didn't win elections by knowing that people vote. And, you don't have to tell them that. Just talk to them about the issues. We will gain much better if we do it that way.
I think that's absolutely right. My favorite thing to say when I've got grumpy people in my office is this how you'd want to convince somebody? Would you want somebody to convince you by being grumpy at you? And it kind of resets the conversation. Like, we're just here to talk about policy. We might disagree at the end of the day, but I'm much more likely to think of you when I'm taking that vote if we had a really great conversation and I'm going to take that vote and I think about the points that you brought up and come away from the conversation feeling good about it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this is an emotional topic and it's easy for, blood pressures to raise, but that's something I try to talk about a lot in my writing in the pro-life training tour, that at the end of the day, if you feel you're standing on the side of good, like, act like it, be that good person, be that kind and considerate person, because otherwise you're just going to give them an excuse to see you as the bad guy and continue in their support or opposition of on the other side of you. So I really appreciate all that perspective. I know I'm fired up to write a letter after this, just because I can't think of something more important that just so directly impacts life. So much legislation, it can be distant in the future that has an effect, but we're talking about 1,000 lives every single year, and no telling how many it would be given what happened with the RHA, given the fact that they see us as an abortion oasis, where I see Illinois really as a desert of fetal rights. So that number could go even higher with the out-of-state people trying to come in. So I can't think of something more important for us as pro-lifers to really step out and do whatever we can to protect this legislation. So turning it over to Amy, so far we've talked about a lot of anti-life bills, but there's some good news in terms of pro-life legislation.
So actually, I'll shoot that back to Ralph.
Okay. It really, a number of legislators say, I want to do something. I want to introduce a pro-life bill. And we've got about, I think, 26 pro-life bills that have been introduced in the House and Senate. And then legislators go on as co-sponsors and so forth. And the situation in Illinois is that these pro-life bills don't even get a hearing in committee, because the committee chairman, they just won't even get a hearing. They're afraid to hear something about the bill. And so these bills don't move, but that doesn't stop these pro-life legislators. They just want to do something. I had a call yesterday, and so the deadline's passed kind of for getting bills. They ask my advice on getting another bill. They just feel, I want to do something. And so that's very important. Again, our state is, one of the state reps told me, he said, he was talking to a pastor. I was in his office, and he said, sometimes in Illinois, it's like playing a 60-minute football game, except we never get the ball. It's all defense. And right now, that's the case. But let's play with what we are given. Let's work as hard as we can. Let's let legislators, even those who say, I'm pro-choice, and then just get out there. Let them know that their constituents, at least the ones that are calling them, are not happy with that, and give the legislators cover who are pro-life. I've had 2 legislators tell me over the years, they say, Ralph, I'm getting some calls. He says, can you get calls to me? Because when they call and say, why aren't you representing your district? Then we've gotten calls that are like 10 to 1 theirs. And he said, well, I am. I got 1,000 calls and you only had 100. So they actually want to hear from us. Some people might think, oh, they're pro-life. Why do I have to call Avery Bourne? She's pro-life. Yeah, it's nice to hear, right, Avery, that the people have your back. They're there, and that they're willing to stand up.
Yeah, it also helps us advocate to our other lawmakers. If we say, hey, I've gotten this many calls, I know that you have a very similar district, It's never good to just hope that your lawmaker will vote the way you want them to, because you don't know the pressure they're getting on the other side, or you don't know if your story is going to be the one that they can tell to another lawmaker that helps them advocate for you.
Right, and that actually answers one of our questions. One of our viewers tonight asked, what should I do? My legislator opposes this bill, supports keeping parental notification. Should I still contact them? And so obviously the answer to that is a resounding yes. So, and, I would also say that it's important to tell your like-minded friends and family about this. They might live in a district with a legislator who supports abortion. So one of the most important things that you can do right now is to be bold, to stand up and to speak out about what you believe, about the importance of keeping parental notification, because as we've said tonight, as Avery and Ralph have said, it's just the most common sense law. So are we ready to go to some questions from our viewers? Awesome. Okay. So we have a question tonight from Jill, and she asks, does filing witness slips move the needle at all? I've done that, but I've always wondered if it really does any good.
Avery?
I think it absolutely does a lot of good. It's good to see the ratio of supporters versus opponents. We've got 10 supporters and 80 opponents. It shows you which side's more engaged. Or we could take that times 10, 1,000, and then 8,000.
Let's see. So next question. How do pro-choice advocates handle the reverse accusation that what they are presenting / teaching is not unbiased or non-stigmatizing, obviously relating to the REACH Act?
I haven't talked to them about it, but this is exactly what this means. When they're saying unbiased and non-stigmatized, and medically accurate, it's a contradiction, because they don't want to say that it's a human life. They don't want to say it begins at conception, but they want it unbiased. You just can't have the two.
No, absolutely. So Pete would like to know, what is the deadline by which contacts should be made? Should we contact the committee that is meeting next week? When is it too late to contact legislators?
Well, it's never too late. I'd like to turn it to Avery. So for the committees you're on, when they're not your constituents, how does that work for you?
I think as a member of a committee, you recognize that you are making a decision of whether it even should meet that first threshold of going to the House floor. So it is totally normal for people from all over the state to contact us on controversial bills that are before committee. That's a role of a committee member, is you're kind of the subject matter expert for that committee. And so obviously it would funnel more people towards you. As far as the deadline, we'll get emails up until the committee hearing and sometimes after the committee hearing, where I'll email back and say, hey, I voted the way you asked, or I did not vote the way you asked, but it's going to the floor, contact whoever. So I would say until it's voted on, either in the committee or in the House, you've got time.
So going back to the REACH Act, the REACH Act stipulates that there will be mandatory sex education from kindergarten through the 12th grade. What possibly could they be teaching kids in kindergarten? Do we have any idea? Is it something that we can talk about? I know I've seen some of the curriculum and it's absolutely mind-blowing. So people are wondering what's going to happen in kindergarten.
Well, in kindergarten, they're talking about, they say you're going to teach the human anatomy, and we don't quite know what that means. It actually goes more to the pro-family issue of the LGBT, because they're saying in kindergarten you're to learn about gender identity and different families and the human anatomy. So they're going to be talking about LGBT to kindergartners, first grade, second grade. They won't get into abortion or sexual or reproduction, etc., until third grade.
Oh, okay. Excellent. So let's see. To parental notification of abortion, you talked a great deal about how if parental notification is repealed, minors from out of state are going to be coming to Illinois to obtain abortions. Will taxpayer funding cover those abortions? Will they be able to obtain those abortions free?
I believe so. I believe that, I believe so. They can come across the border. There's a federal program, and it's part of the state program that says that if a woman or of any age is pregnant, then she can get Medicaid just for that. And a woman or a minor can come over and say, I don't have income. I don't have, I live in Illinois and I would like to get an abortion. And under this program, you're not to verify income. You're not to verify residence. But it's meant to take care of the woman who wants to take this pregnancy to term. So for the first 30 days, they give them a medical card so they can start getting medical help, and that's what you want. If they want to get for the year, then they have to come in. Then they do have to provide information on income and where they live and so forth. But if they're coming across the border from Missouri and they go to the abortion clinic at Fairview Heights, they can say, yes, I'm from Illinois. And the rule says you don't ask them what their address is, what their income is. They could just say, I'm not working. You give them this 30-day medical card, but they don't want it for 30 days. They're going right down the hall. And Planned Parenthood is one of those that is allowed to make that decision on this particular federal state program. So they can say, all right, you're eligible. They give them the card. They go down the hallway. They have the abortion. They go back. They don't even need they don't care about the 30 days or after. So we're in very serious problems with that. We're going to have people getting abortions here, and we, the Illinoisans, are paying for it.
Unbelievable. I worked at Wisconsin Right to Life prior to joining the team here in Illinois, and I know a lot of what we did was protecting our women from everything bad that was happening in Illinois. We knew that a lot of women from Southeast Wisconsin were going to the new Planned Parenthood clinic right across the border. And so, everybody watching tonight, it's so important for you to talk to your legislators, not only for the sake of the girls of Illinois, but for the sake of girls all across the country. We have no doubt that, this is going to make the abortion rate in Illinois rise exponentially. And one thing I wanted to mention real quick is, just so you're aware, what our opposition is saying. We've gotten a little bit of intel, and one of the big things that they're saying is that the whole human trafficking angle is a scare tactic on behalf of anti-choice advocates, that we're blowing it out of proportion, and this is not something that legislators should really be concerned about whatsoever. We know that's absolutely false. We are working with several people in law enforcement who say, yes, that abortion is most definitely a way that human traffickers and other sexual predators cover their crime. The group Live Action did undercover recordings in several abortion clinics that were not in Illinois. I'll be clear about that. In Illinois, the law requires that both parties be aware that something is being taped. But Live Action went to other states and went to Planned Parenthood clinics. The undercover reporters said that they were pimps with young girls, and how can I get these girls abortions? And they said, oh, well, just don't ask their age. Just don't do this. Just don't do that. And they push the girls right through to have abortions. And, while we have no definitive proof that this is happening here, those people in law enforcement that we've been talking to said, yes, that does indeed happen. So it is not a scare tactic for us to be concerned about human trafficking. What is a scare tactic is the fact that the other side is claiming the reason that we need to remove parental notification is that the judicial bypass process is such a grave injustice to young women, and it's traumatizing and horrible for them. I married into a family of attorneys. Steve is an attorney. We all know lots of judges and attorneys. And despite what the stereotypes might say, the majority of people who go into law do so because they want to help people. These judges that are seeing these young girls want to help them. And I even heard somebody from Planned Parenthood say, judges don't have the training to know if a girl is being trafficked, which is, that doesn't even pass the straight face test. It's very important to be aware this is what the other side is saying.
And Amy, as well as, so you mentioned a scare tactic. So Ralph, you had mentioned earlier that they suggest that one of the risks of having the Parental Notification Act is that it could put girls in a position of abuse from their parents if they find out that they're pregnant. But am I right in saying there hasn't been a documented instance of violence or harassment against a child since this has passed?
Well, I'm not aware of it, right.
I was going to mention one other thing, but I'll go to another question. An anonymous attendee wants to know, how do we know Planned Parenthood is involved in the creation of the curriculum?
Because on the REACH Act, there was a press conference, and Planned Parenthood hosted the press conference and Equality Illinois. So, and on a webinar of Planned Parenthood, they said that's their priority. And and Planned Parenthood has these types of curricula available. So they're in that work, and this is priority 1B, I guess. 1A is repeal of parental notice, and 1B is the passage of the REACH Act. But they had the press conference, and they support it totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, we've got a lot of questions. Thank you so much for all the information. How do we stay posted when these things go to committee, and where do we find contact information for these committees?
If you're with us, and I guess you are, or you wouldn't be on this webinar, but if you stay tuned with Illinois Right to Life Action, we'll be sending you alerts. In fact, we'll be sending one out pretty soon with 2 witness slip opportunities, one for House Bill 1797, which is the repeal of parental notice, and one for House Bill 1736, which is the REACH Act. And all you have to do is click that on. The electronic witness slip will appear. You fill that out, send it on its way. It's very easy, and we want tens of thousands on this. It will make a huge statement.
Excellent. Okay, another anonymous attendee would like to know, or it says, abuse in families is often not documented, as children often keep quiet. How can we ensure young girls are being protected if they choose not to get an abortion? What resources can we offer them? Oh, well, I'll jump in. The thing we know with with many abortion clinics, and all of us who have been in the pro-life movement for any length of time know women who've worked in the abortion industry, women who've had abortions, et cetera, et cetera. On a personal level, everybody personally that I know who has worked in an abortion clinic has said that these girls come in for an abortion, they get a bag of birth control, thank you, pushed out the door. The thing that is so important about these parental notification laws, as I mentioned before, is that if a girl cannot tell her family, the law says that she can get this judicial bypass. And despite the scare tactics of abortion advocates, this is an opportunity for a girl to go confidentially to a judge and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is my problem. By giving a girl an abortion and putting her right back into the situation from which she was receiving abuse is not helping her at all. The same goes for human trafficking. We've seen again and again and again that these girls get abortions and they are back out on the streets almost immediately. And human trafficking, what we've learned is it's not always, what you see portrayed in the movies and on television. Most girls are still living at home. They're trafficked between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 7 o'clock at night. They're still home for dinner. By giving a girl the necessity to tell her parents that she is going to have an abortion, that gives her the opportunity to tell her parents, or for her parents to know that something is wrong, that something is going on. And as I said before, the vast majority of parents love their children and want what's best for them. Another facet of this is that we know that children's brains are not fully developed until they're 25. And we see proof of this. I mean, I have 2 daughters, they're older now, but when they were in high school, when they started driving, our insurance rates went through the roof. We see in sentencing laws that the sentencing guidelines are different from children, for minors than they are for adults. Why? Because children's brains are not as developed when they're in junior high and high school as they are by the time they're 25. Abortion advocates say they want girls to have autonomy, that they need to make their own decisions, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody who's watching this, who's been the mother of a teenage girl, knows that they need their parents as much as they want to be independent, as much as they want to think that they can do things on their own. Eventually, they always come back to mom and dad for help. So the bottom line is repealing parental notification, as I said at the beginning, tramples the rights of parents. And it's such a huge injustice to parents, and especially to our teenage girls who will be further victimized from the bad situations that they're in, or that they may be in. So anything else? I'll go on to the next question. Let's see. So going back to REACH, can parents opt out of the mandatory sex ed, or is that going to be difficult? Is it an option at all?
Oh, it is. It's in the bill that parents can opt out, but opting out is not the same as giving consent, a parental consent before. It's a little more difficult, but even with that, that's not an excuse for this kind of bad legislation for those students who haven't been opted out. It's not what the state of Illinois should be sponsoring as a public policy. It's not good for the schools shouldn't be involved in this and so forth. So again, opting out is there, but how many parents really learn or know about it? And that's, but it's a bad law, period. I mean, or a bad, not a law yet, but, and hopefully not, but it's terrible legislation. That's no excuse because you have an opt-out that therefore they can do whatever they want.
Right. No, exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, my husband and I felt like we were really on top of what our girls were learning in school. Both of our daughters went to public school, and sometimes around the dinner table at night, it was like, wait, what did you learn today? So, it's hard, with parents working and so forth today to know absolutely everything that's going on with your kids. So, Ralph, you're absolutely right.
It's also a take it or leave it approach, right? You can't talk to your school board about what the curriculum includes. You can't have parents actually have input. It's you can opt your kids out, but this is what it is, take it or leave it, which is really goes against the local aspect of community school boards and public schools, I think, to begin with.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so any final words, Ralph, Avery, Steve?
Okay. Avery, I'll let you.
Sure. I just want to thank you all for your advocacy. This is so important. Um, it is grassroots activism and people telling their story to people who make policies that make a big difference. So thank you all who are attending for taking time this evening to learn about this and to learn about how you can effectively advocate to your legislators so that we can pass pro-life policies in Illinois. I'm always excited to say we can pass pro-life policies instead of just playing defense like Ralph mentioned. So we will get there.
Yeah.
We have to stop these first and then we'll get there.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, well, thank you again, everyone, for being here. Once more, we'll be emailing you all of the slides that were presented tonight, as well as some other information tomorrow. If you have any questions, concerns, etc., you're always welcome to contact our office. Just email info, I-N-F-O, at illinoisrighttolife.org, all one word, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Ralph and Steve, thank you for all you do for Illinois Right to Life. I can honestly say both of you and the entire staff work so incredibly hard. I inherited the best team ever. Avery, thank you again so much for being here. We really, really appreciate your insight and your expertise. And everyone, be bold, speak out, keep up with the latest information. And thank you again for being here. Good night.
Good night.